A small moon, neighboring planets, and distant stars dominate the night sky. But this is not our night sky, and this night is eternal. This series has mainly focused on the landscapes of Capitoline and the life forms that live on it. But in today's episode, we turn our viewport towards the skies and talk about stargazing and space events, meteor showers, solar eclipses, aurorae, and all the good stuff like that. So join us on a journey across alien skies. Capitoline and the rest of the Romulus system is based on the TRAPPIST-1 system, and a big talking point of the TRAPPIST-1 system is the view you'd get of the other planets. The TRAPPIST-1 system is very compact and has planets roughly between the sizes of Earth and Mars. With these factors in mind, if you were to stand on any of the TRAPPIST-1 planets and just look up, you'd see the neighboring planets about as big as the moon is in Earth's sky, allowing viewers to see landscapes and surface features very clearly. Again, just like the moon. On the day side, you'll see planets B, C, and D. Due to their relatively quick orbits, these planets would cause solar eclipses on a pretty regular basis. However, since Capitoline, TRAPPIST-1e, whatever you want to call it, is so close to Romulus, TRAPPIST-1, TRAPPIST-1 would be 4 times larger than the sun in the sky. Meaning, no total solar eclipses. Sorry. And that's kind of all there is to talk about on the day side of Capitoline. Let's move to the night side. Assuming we find a spot that isn't in a perpetual blizzard, let alone a spot that has a clear sky, the night sky would be dominated by 3 other planets, planets F, G, and H. However, there are some big differences here. A notable one being TRAPPIST-1F. At its closest approach, TRAPPIST-1F is a little bigger than the moon in the sky. And unlike planets B, C, and D, planets F, G, and H are all gonna be front-lit by sunlight from Capitoline's point of view. Lastly, all 3 of the outer planets are a lot brighter than Earth's moon. The night skies of Capitoline would be dominated by the outer planets. And unfortunately, not much else. The moon already drowns out the stars in Earth's sky, and these outer planets are not only brighter, but can sometimes be bigger in the sky than the moon. So while Capitoline has a still spectacular view of its neighboring planets, it's gonna be a starless night. Sometimes, these planets are still moving along in their orbits, so there may be a time where there are no planets in the night sky. So under this starry night, let's map out alien constellations. Alright, here we are at TRAPPIST-1, our tiny little red guy. If you're wondering what this is a program called Celestia. It's another space exploration thing, and we're going to be using it to take a look around the night sky a little, see if there's any constellations that we could make up. Oh yeah, I should probably discuss what a constellation is. It's basically a pattern or design of stars that we make up. Basically, take bright stars in your sky, connect them up, constellations. And yeah, since we are in a completely different region of the galaxy, all of these stars are going to be different compared to what it's like in our solar system. I think I could turn that on actually. So here we are at Earth, and as you can see, the constellations are enabled. We can see them. Moon is bright. God damn. And if you there's Orion. Yeah, these are very clear designs, shapes, very intentional. And that's because these are all made by humans from the point of view of Earth. However, if we go to TRAPPIST-1, all of these stars, all of the constellations get kind of fucked up. That's because constellations don't take into account the actual distance between the stars, it's just treating it as a flat plane. So once you introduce 3D space, they all get messed up. Let's go to our homeworld. Quite accurate. TRAPPIST-1I? You have it? Why do you have it? That's cool. Oh, that's so cute. But yeah, since we're at TRAPPIST-1, let's just take a look around. And while making this video, I did see a very interesting set of stars in our night sky. Let's see. There they are. Yeah. A completely straight line. That's over there-ish. Or wait, there's 2? Oh, shoot. 2 straight lines. 3, kind of. That's a bit unnerving. Oh, there's Betelgeuse. Cool. TRAPPIST-1 is relatively close to the sun, so we may see some familiar faces. There is Aurorae. Sirius! Yo! Huh. Yeah, let's go back to the Milky Way. Let's just see what's on here. I am just skimming through the night sky for this part of the video, so if you want to check this place out yourself and come up with your own, feel free to download Celestia. I put the link in the description. It's free. Go check it out. Is that the Pleiades? That's a star cluster. That is a star cluster. Right there. Cool. There we go. My field of view is super low for some reason. Yeah, that's more like it. Another line of stars, it looks like, over there. Yeah. Aside from the lines of stars in the night sky, I don't think there's much of anything else out here that is notable, at least from what I can see in the program. Magellanic Clouds, Milky Way. What is that? What is... Dude, that feels like something I should know since it's right there. What is that? Oh, it's another dwarf galaxy. Ew. But yeah, I can't really make out any more distinct patterns or designs in this night sky. So again, if you're more creatively inclined about this stuff than I am, feel free to download the program, go to TRAPPIST-1, make up your own constellations. And one last thing, if you are wondering where the sun is in the night sky, select Sol. It is there. Yeah, it's not even bright enough to be labeled. There you are. Barely visible in TRAPPIST-1's night sky. If we're stargazing on the night side of Capitoline, we may also catch a glimpse of the Aurorae here. Due to some weirdness within Capitoline, Capitoline's geomagnetic poles reside on the day side and night side hemispheres. I talk about the day side Aurorae and how a lot of them could make audible Aurorae depending on the local environment, but like, the sun's out over there, you can't see anything. But here, across the entire night side of Capitoline, the Aurorae will be brighter than anything we've ever seen. Oh yeah, as a reminder, I named the Aurorae on the night side of Capitoline the Aurorae Orvalis after an island arc on the night side of Capitoline, or I'm just gonna call them the Orvalian Lights. That's a lot easier to say. The Orvalian Lights would be fueled by Romulus's higher stellar activity, alongside us just being closer to Romulus. So effectively, they'll stay on forever. And this is before we get hit by a flare. The colors of Aurorae depend on the atmospheric composition. Since Capitoline's atmosphere is pretty much the same as Earth's, Capitoline would have pretty similar Aurorae, reds and greens, or sometimes blues and pinks depending on the altitude, but again, pretty similar. Some other fun things to look out for while stargazing are space rocks. Okay, well, not those smaller ones that burn up in the atmosphere. Or, in rarer situations, much larger rocky bodies with a lot of ice in them that travel through the inner solar system, vaporize, and form large tails that cover up a large part of the sky. How common would a meteor shower or a comet flyby be in a system like TRAPPIST-1? Here is unfortunately where we have to make some trade-offs. Multiple studies and observations couldn't find any evidence for comets or a Kuiper belt in the TRAPPIST-1 system. Comets were likely a lot more prevalent in the past, considering the TRAPPIST-1 planet's densities, suggesting a large amount of water, but today, as far as we can observe, the TRAPPIST-1 system is pretty clean. So unfortunately, that means no meteor showers nor comet flybys for Capitoline's night skies. While we are talking about stars, and because I don't have a better segue, let's end with the discussion on Capitoline's stellar neighborhood. Based on what we can detect from Earth, the closest stellar neighbors to TRAPPIST-1 are a bunch of brown dwarfs. The closest being that one, with a distance of a little over 6 light years from TRAPPIST-1. So yeah, unfortunately there's nothing at all within 5 light years of TRAPPIST-1. The closest stellar neighbor to TRAPPIST-1 that isn't a brown dwarf is actually the second closest object. HIP 112774 is a K-type star, around 7 light years from TRAPPIST-1. Within 20 light years, however, you get 2 pretty bright stars, Lambda Piscium and Delta Capricorni, a binary system consisting of an A-type star and a K-type star. Other notable bright stars in the neighborhood are Iota Piscium and Xi Pegasi, a binary consisting of an F-type star and an M-type star. And due to the pretty limited knowledge we have of this neighborhood in particular, and partly because all of our efforts have been looking towards the centerpiece, only one star in TRAPPIST-1's stellar neighborhood has known exoplanets. Kind of, it's Fomalhaut. Fomalhaut lies just a little over 20 light years from TRAPPIST-1, and it consists of 3 very young stars, with the A-type star, Fomalhaut A, and the red dwarf, Fomalhaut C, both having substantial debris disks. All 3 stars, despite being in a trinary star system, are quite far apart from each other, like light years apart. But they're still gravitationally bound to each other, each completing orbits within like tens of millions of years, so it's technically a trinary star system. In 2008, astronomers directly imaged a potential exoplanet candidate around Fomalhaut A. This thing would have been a very young gas giant between the sizes of Neptune or bigger than Jupiter, and in 2015, it was given the name Dagon. In 2019, another exoplanet candidate was found orbiting the star Fomalhaut B. It's another young Jupiter-sized planet, and again, it's not confirmed as of yet. But something a lot more interesting also happened in 2019. Dagon started growing? Okay, well, it didn't start growing in 2019, but over the years since its discovery, astronomers observed Dagon growing in size and decreasing in brightness. As this trend continued into the 2020s, its status as an exoplanet was revoked. James Webb observations in 2023 killed it for good. It found nothing. So why was Dagon no longer an exoplanet? Well, the leading theory for its weird behavior is that it wasn't a planet at all, but instead an explosion as a result of 2 asteroids colliding within Fomalhaut A's debris disk. In late 2025, the James Webb observed more bursts of light coming from Fomalhaut A, probably due to more collisions. And as we all know, the collisions of these planetesimals are what form planets. And whatever formed as a result of that initial explosion from the 2 asteroids colliding, that's still there. So technically, Dagon still exists. And it's incredibly likely that in the disk of Fomalhaut A, more protoplanets are forming. And let's not forget the candidate exoplanet around Fomalhaut B, and the other disk and comets that we have detected around Fomalhaut C. These stars are roughly around 400 million years old, plenty of time for protoplanets to start forming. If a planet is forming around any of these stars, or if we eventually confirm one, it would have the potential to become a very weird world. Wait, what? No. Capitoline, yes, if you found this video interesting and you want to see more about Capitoline, feel free to like and subscribe. It really helps me out a lot, and I don't want you to miss out on anything, so do all that. Alright, bye.